Sheriff Mack. I'll turn the time over to you once again. A round of applause for Sheriff Mack. Thank you for coming over today. Well, I can only echo that and tell you it's a really humbling experience to be here with you. I don't know if you know about this outside of Burns, but you've been thrust into the international limelight. So, maybe we owe you an apology for that. Maybe we owe the Hammer an apology for that. I came here, what was it, January 2nd? I was here. Came here to bring attention to the injustice happening to some of your neighbors. And I'm going to tell you that in my 20 years of law enforcement and most of my adult life in battling for freedom, I can just simply tell you one thing, that Dwight and Steve Hammond should not be in prison. Susie should not be without her son and husband. And that's an absolute outrage and an injustice. And tonight, I'm going to ask this several times, so I might as well start with this. I want every public official in the state of Oregon and in this county, please answer me one little question. When an injustice occurs in your area, especially in your neighborhood and your community, who has the legal, lawful, constitutional, and moral responsibility to stop it?
The sheriff.
Please tell me. I want all of you to ask them that question, because I don't think anybody's answered that question yet. I want to know, in the United States of America and in Harney County, when an injustice occurs, who has the duty and responsibility to stop it?
The sheriff.
The sheriff. And in my book, I asked the question, the book that the good brother just had here in his hand. On the very first page, I quote Thomas Jefferson. He said, "When all government shall be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided and become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated." I ask, and I'll ask this again, when government becomes venal and oppressive, to whom can the people turn for peace, safety, protection, and liberty? And why can't that happen? And why aren't we doing it? And I'm going to tell you, somebody else said this, probably as well as I have ever. And I was on his show about a year and a half ago, 2 years maybe. Lou Dobbs. And I don't know if any of you saw his show, but it's on YouTube if you want to go back and look at it. And he was really railing about the injustice that had happened right here. And he was railing, not on the federal government. He said, "I blame every elected official in the state of Oregon, starting with the governor."
Yeah.
I haven't heard her say anything to the federal government about leaving honest, law-abiding citizens alone in this state. Nor did I hear anybody say it from this county. Leave law-abiding citizens alone. You know what it's called when government leaves you alone?
Freedom.
It's called liberty. That's how you define liberty. By how much government stays out of your life. And I was, you know what, I told some people back here, and I've talked about it with people who came with me. There's some people who came and met me in Arizona from Texas, who were traveling with me and helping me with this association, with the CSPOA. And I'm going to tell you right now, I want you to make that a household name, and it's because of one thing and one thing only. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with, and let me sidetrack this just a little bit. This morning, before I left for the airport, a Reverend Thomas came to see me for an early breakfast meeting at the airport, at the Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix. So that's how my day started, a meeting with this Reverend who came and he said, do you know that your CSPOA is the only peaceful and effective solution we have left in America? And I said, I know, because when people start looking for the truth of what we have left, as far as solutions and alternatives, this is the only one. And this is because we take back America, not in Washington, D.C., and not this farce of an election that's going on right now. And you know what this election is to me? Entertainment. That's it. Do you really think that voting for another Democrat or Republican in Washington, D.C. is going to change a damn thing there? It's not going to. Ted Cruz, if he gets elected, is not going to abolish the IRS. He's not. Okay? And I know Ted Cruz. I would consider him a friend. He's not going to do it. And anything that has anything to do with restoring liberty in this country is not going to happen in Washington, D.C. It's too bought and paid for, it's too corrupt, and it's too Washington, D.C. And they're not going to stop being Washington, D.C. So where do we have a solution? We take back America, my dear friends, county by county and state by state, one sheriff and one county at a time.
Amen.
And we do it. Okay? Now, let's see, where'd everybody go? I came here with my son too. Jimmy, where are you? Oh, there he is. Okay. I want to make sure my bodyguard stays close by. But I've got emails and I can show, and texts. I can show you my text, but I don't want to have anybody make fun of me because I still have a flip phone. But I could show you that. Yeah, somebody else is smart like I am, or just old like I am. But I got several texts from friends and others warning me not to come here. And that just made me want to come all the way.
Thank you.
You know, you're more than welcome. And I'll tell you what, I had such a great time when we were here at that wonderful, beautiful rally. And what did the press just want to call that? A bunch of anti-government, right-wing extremist fanatics are marching from the Safeway parking lot up by the sheriff's office and up to the Hammond's home, where we laid roses and sang Amazing Grace. Boy, that's radical for you, isn't it? Boy, we gave the press a real letdown, didn't we? Holding our flags, and I was up towards the front. When I looked back down towards Safeway, and I was up about a block and a half, and I saw so many of you carrying those flags, and that was absolutely the most beautiful picture. And thank you for being here that day. And then that day, some people went to the Malheur Wildlife Refuge and occupied it. And I think enough has been said about that, but let me just reiterate something. I've said this and I'll say it again. Ammon Bundy is a friend of mine. He is a good man. He is not enough. But I disagree totally with that country. I don't believe it was a good idea. I told him then. He asked me to come out there, and I refused. And I did not support the tactic. I understand the frustration. Totally. Totally. And we should have been putting all our energy into doing something to help the Hammonds. And yes, the rest of the ranchers in this country, because there's no question about it. The federal government is shutting you down. They are. And you can look at the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. This is not my opinion. Let's go back 2 years, shall we? Or 22 months. Can we go back 22 months to Bunkerville, Nevada, where some of this, I guess, got started? Do you know how many ranchers there were in Clark County, Nevada, there were 53. Do you know that there was only one left now? The nut, the right-wing extremist, the anti-government guy. He saved his ranch. The others did not. And all were put out of business by our own federal government. One, the Dan sisters. I know them too. They're Native American. They don't care. The federal government doesn't care. And guess what? They're going after the Lakota Sioux land in South Dakota and Nebraska too. I went there and stood with the Lakota Sioux. Loved them. Great people. The federal government does not care what race you are or who you are. They're taking the land. They want the land. And if the Oregon State Sheriff's Association wanted to investigate something, investigate this for me. How many ranchers have they already put out of business in Oregon? Do you know how many farmers they put out of business? Do you know how many farmers in the San Joaquin Valley they put out of business in California, where we get 50% of our fruits, vegetables, and nuts? Do you know how many farmers they put out of business in the Klamath Falls Basin? When they turned off the water there, I was there. What was that, 9, 10, 12 years ago? As the Bush administration did that one. Do you know the difference between the Obama and Bush administration? Obama spends more. That's all. Obama spends more. That's it. It's the same thing. Take the land, suppress, oppress, and attack. You know, I've been to Washington, D.C. a few times. And I love Washington, D.C. Hate the politicians and hate the government, but I love Washington, D.C. And I walked into the Jefferson Memorial. Man, he was a radical right-wing extremist, wasn't he? Have you read the wall of that building? I read the wall. I guess you're not supposed to read the stuff there. You're certainly not supposed to quote it. And you're not supposed to read the Constitution in this country today. And you're certainly not supposed to quote it. No. Because the media will nail you big time. Oh, you're an anti-government extremist. All you have to do is quote the Founding Fathers and quote the Constitution, and you're going to get that label. And then, if that doesn't stick, they'll start telling everybody that you're a racist. Wow. And I just got back from Houston last weekend, supporting a candidate there running in Houston for sheriff. And he's running completely and entirely on a constitutional platform that he, in the third largest sheriff's office in the United States of America, will be a constitutional sheriff, and he will enforce the Constitution. And he's not going to allow the IRS and other federal agencies to come in and victimize his citizens. Wow, what a novel idea. And Sheriff Arpaio from Phoenix and I were both there campaigning with him. And don't cheer for Joe, he didn't come. And Joe and I were there with him, and we took several pictures just to prove to people, because Carl Pittman, who's that candidate, is a black American. And yet they've tried to tell the people that Joe and I are both racist. And you know who questioned that the most? Carl Pittman. And he's a good man, he's a Republican, and I don't care what party they are, I really don't. Because my other favorite sheriff in America is Sheriff David A. Clark Jr. from Milwaukee, the only black sheriff in all of Wisconsin. And he's my brother. He's a little bit dark complected more than I am, but he'd probably beat me in basketball too, but he's a great man. And we don't care what party people are, we don't care what color they are. We don't care. But we care if you support and defend the Constitution, we care if you support and defend and keep your oath of office. Isn't it a little bit of a matter of integrity that when you take your job, before you can take your job, you have to swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution? Not to the President, not to the Supreme Court, not to the county commissioners, but in God's name, you swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution itself. What does that presuppose? That you might read it. That you might know what you're swearing to. And that makes every police officer, peace officer, every public official, every sheriff, a guard of the Constitution. That's what we are. And that all three branches of government, separate as they might be, have the same purpose. And that is to protect and defend liberty. In fact, do you want to know what the Declaration of Independence says? Is the purpose of all government, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That almost sounds religious, doesn't it? Oh, we can't be religious, we can't do religious stuff. But it tells us in there where our rights come from. And it does not come from Washington, D.C., and it does not come from the President, and it didn't even come from the forefathers of this great country. Our rights come from, let's see, what did they say? Endowed by our Creator. And if we break our word to you to protect your Creator endowed rights, we're breaking our word to Almighty God. We have lied. We've taken an oath that we made a joke of. And the founders thought we will have everybody in all three branches swear that oath so that we will perpetuate the continuance of our sacred Constitution. And we fought 4 wars to stop communism, and now we embrace it in our country today. These things were never meant to be, my friends. Never meant to be. Just as much as I'm standing here in front of you, this was never meant to be. And we've got to take America back. And I want to reiterate something again. The CSPOA and my life are dedicated to a peaceful and effective return to our Constitution. Now, when I left my home this morning, I knelt down in prayer with my wife and my son, and I asked that this meeting tonight would be the beginning of America coming together. And those of you who are FBI agents in the room, I mean this to you, and to any peace officer or public official, same thing. It is time for you who work in all levels of government to come together with us, with the people of this country, and help us return America to its constitutional foundation. That's all. My dear friends, that's why I came here. That is why I came here. The threats notwithstanding, that is why I came here. And I believe so much in you as a community, and I'm hoping that some way, somehow, I can bring some peace to you, and that I can give you some direction that we can go. Now, I kind of admit this right up front. I've done some crazy things. All right? Suing the federal government when I was sheriff in a small town in southern Arizona was absolutely crazy. Ask my wife. She'll tell you. Even though she was the one who made the final decision for this to go. To this day, I still say, you must have been having a weird day that you actually said for me to go ahead and do this. And she did. And that was a miracle. And we look back at that. That happened in that would have been like January of 1994. Because this was pursuant to the Brady Bill. And the Brady Bill was the first time in American history where Congress passed a law signed by the President, Bill Clinton at the time, signed by the President, that proposed a gun control scheme known as the Brady Bill that forced and threatened to arrest sheriffs in this country. I'm not making this up. You can go look up the case yourself. Cornell University Law School did a great review of it. Look it up for yourself. I've got copies of it here. There's no way I could lie about this. This happened in court. I was there. And they actually threatened to arrest us if we failed to comply. All the sheriffs in the country. You either do this because we told you to, or you're going to jail. And I'm going to show you this. Now, just so you know, what you see behind you, I'm going to show you the evidence. Not just of that, but of this whole thing that I'm talking about. Many of you want to know, is this really true that I've written in books, that I've spent my life doing, is the sheriff the #1 law enforcement authority in your county, in this country? Okay? Some still doubt that, and I'm going to show those doubting Thomases the proof. And I'm a former investigator, former detective. I've investigated murder, I've investigated bike theft, whatever, shoplifting, rape, any of them, any crime that you've ever imagined, I've investigated. Oh, guess what? I've investigated arson too. Do you know, to be charged with arson, you have to do it on purpose. You have to prove intent. It means that you intentionally burn something to destroy something. That there was criminal intent. Is there any way that was involved with the Hammond situation? No way. None. None. And so if there was none of that, there certainly wasn't any intention to commit domestic terrorism. And everybody knows they are not domestic terrorists. And that is a joke. And that's why when Lou Dobbs said, I blame every elected official in Oregon, he was absolutely correct. Because there's not anybody in here that doesn't know that is an absolute outrage and a farce. And let's get serious about that. And I go right back to my question. Who has the responsibility, the moral duty, to interpose and stand in the way when somebody is receiving that kind of ridiculous treatment, this kind of criminal treatment in America today? Now, briefcase. I need my briefcase. Did somebody throw that? Jimmy could get it. Okay. There he is. I've got to show you something there too, because Donnie. Wow. That's what you call service with a smile there. Thank you. Thank you. He really was smiling, too. Now, I don't know if any of you remember this, but we didn't learn a lot about the principles of the Revolutionary War when I went to school. But you know the Battle of Trenton? When George Washington crossed the Delaware, you know, he looked so strong in that picture, and they're running away. They're running from the Redcoats over to Valley Forge because they have no way of fighting anymore. If they weren't suffering from dysentery, they were suffering from desertion. And this was no picnic. And some of the men, one captain said, some of the men were naked in every sense of the word. Some had taken the last little pieces of clothes and tied them around their feet because they had no boots. And when they went back to Trenton, it was called blood tracks in the snow. And literally some of them left tracks of blood in the snow. Now, how did they get so motivated to go back? They were running, they go in and seeking refuge at Valley Forge, and some of the wives came there to try to help them eat something besides fire cakes. You know what that is? Oh, wheat boiled in water. Wheat flour or just white flour boiled in water, and they eat it. Nothing cake about it, unless they let it dry, and then they eat that. That's all they had. Any wonder that they had dysentery, right? So, how do you get a starving, beaten, unequipped, your backs to the wall, completely starving army to go back across the Delaware, march 20 miles in the worst blizzard ever, in the snow and ice, to attack? What did Washington teach us? The power of inspiration and the power of leadership. And what do you do when you're cornered? You attack. What an absolutely astonishing leader we had in that man. But do you know what he used to motivate his men? He used Thomas Paine. And he read them the American Crisis, and he passed this out to all the soldiers, and they were required to read it. And it got to it. You remember the part? You've heard this part. These are times that try men's souls. the summer soldier and sunshine patriot will, of course, shy away from the battle. And then he went on and he said, he talked about how the federal government, King George III, we have come full circle, haven't we? He said they passed not just crazy taxation, but a law called the Declaratory Act that allowed the Parliament and King to legislate anything they want, anything against the colonists. They could control their lives. They could put Hessians and redcoats in their homes at any time. The Hessians could literally knock on your door and say, we live here now. Or the redcoats, just come in, we live here now. Where's the master bedroom? That's where we're staying. And they did that. And that's why we have the Third Amendment today. That's the founding fathers saying you don't get to do that ever again, government. And how did the whole war start? The war started because they came here, the redcoats came to Lexington and Concord to take away the guns of the colonists. So they wouldn't have a way to defend themselves against liberty. Against tyranny. The same thing Thomas Jefferson said in that wonderful memorial where he said, defiance of tyranny is obedience to God. You're not supposed to read that stuff. Go to Washington, D.C., but don't read the stuff on the walls. Because you'll be a radical if you do. And then, get this. Oh, and by the way, the Declaratory Act would be similar to the Affordable Care Act, which proves they can legislate anything against us anytime they want. Okay? And then he says, but I should suffer the misery of devils were I to make a whore of my soul by swearing allegiance to one whose character is that of a sottish, stupid, stubborn, worthless, brutish man. Well, he didn't like King George III, did he? And then he says, but we punish on the one hand, and on the same, let it go. And that's the part I want to talk about just real quickly. Do you know that when I was sheriff, do you know how many times the BLM and the Forest Service did a controlled burning that got out of control?
Every time.
Just about every time. And in our county, my county where I was sheriff was Graham County, like Graham Cracker. Mount Graham was in that county. It was the only place we could escape the 110 and 115 summer temperatures. It's a beautiful mountain. I grew up there in doing Boy Scout stuff all my life. And had lakes and streams and pine trees and hunting and fishing, just beautiful there. And it was cool up there, 10,500 feet at the top. And so here they go, another controlled burning. Wind picks up, they burn half the side of the mountain down. And you know what? They didn't charge anybody with arson. Nobody gets fined. Just like Thomas Paine says, they punish on the one and let the other one go. And government should have to answer to a higher standard, not a lower one. And they never get in any trouble for it. And then I've talked to sheriffs in Florida. It's happened the same thing there. I've seen it in northern Arizona. I've seen it in Utah. I've seen it in California. I've seen it in Oregon. I've seen it in Colorado. Nobody gets punished. Nobody's in prison from the BLM for ever doing that. Nobody ever got charged with anything or even fined or fired. Nobody even gets disciplined. And so I always, when I go to the airport, they always give me a USA Today newspaper. And I always read the front page. And I always get really tickled by some of this. Because it just totally amazes me. The Secret Service goes down to Latin America. And the prostitutes call the police on them because they didn't pay the agreed amount. And so the Secret Service gets in trouble by the local police. You have to pay our prostitutes what they charge. What's the matter with you gringos? Don't come down here anymore if you're not going to pay what they charge. So that made the papers. And then, not to be outdone, the DEA goes down and does the same thing, except just a little bit better. Now I'm going to show you this. Front page, USA Today. Let me give you the date, March 27, 2015. Right here, front page. Anybody's camera needs to get that? It's this one right here. U.S. drug agents engaged in sex parties. Yeah. And then I read I said, this has got to be funny. Front page, USA Today. Okay? This isn't the New American. This isn't John Birch Society. Okay? USA Today. And then you read in here and you go, for years, Drug Enforcement Administration agents posted in Colombia engaged in sex parties involving prostitutes who were supplied by the local cartels. By the local cartels. Do you know how illegal that is? The very groups that they're supposed to be fighting and combating are so friendly with them that they pay for their prostitutes. Can I ask you something else? Can you guess how many were prosecuted? Can you guess how many were disciplined? Can you guess how many resigned? One. The new female director of the DEA decided that she better do the right thing and quit. Why? She didn't do it. She had nothing to do with it. She wasn't even there. My dear friends, and yet we have 2 law-abiding citizens sitting in jail as domestic terrorists. Absolutely astonishing. This is the government that local officials trust to come in here and enforce land management? They can't even balance their budget. They can't even take care of the simplest things in Washington, D.C. And we're going to trust them to run Oregon? And have you wondered why they own all our land? Is it okay? Is it constitutional for them to own 90% of Nevada?
No.
70% of Arizona. In my county, probably the worst one ever, anywhere, 95%. Do you want to know why we just couldn't quite make it financially in that county? We had no tax base. 5% of the land belonged to us, the rest to the federal government. I admit part of that was an Apache reservation, but it's a very, very small part. They didn't like it either. And so now we have all the scandals from Black Panthers stopping people from voting by threatening to kill them. And that's on videotape. And our president, who said just recently that he wants to make it easier for people to vote, he and Eric Holder refused to prosecute the people who were guilty of that crime in stopping people from voting at all. Is there anything worse that's ever happened in voting history than to threaten to kill people who are going in to vote? They're not going to stop that. And then they run guns down to Mexico with the Fast and Furious project. Do you know how many people went to jail for that? Murders. At least 400 murders committed with those guns. That our government ran down to Mexico. And for what kind of stupidity was that? Anybody prosecuted? No, the whole thing stopped because Barack Obama said, I declare executive privilege on this.
There was one
And it all stopped.
guy that was prosecuted, and he was the drug cartel.
Yeah, I mean, and he was probably one of the guys that provided the prostitutes for him.
Well, they found the 50 caliber in his when they caught him.
And we could go on and on and on with these things, but how about all the scandals involving the IRS? And Lois Lerner gets up and screams, I did nothing wrong. I've committed no crime. And I plead the fifth. Goodbye, I'm retired. I'm going to try that. If I ever get audited, I'm going to quote her. I've done nothing wrong. I've committed no crime. Goodbye. I'm going to Hawaii. And this is the type of crimes committed every day by our government And what do?
More.
They do more. And they go after people like Dwight and Steve. Astonishing. And then we have people who go, well, I just don't have the authority to keep the peace. What? Let's get involved in what we promised to do when we took our jobs. All of us. I'm not pointing the finger at any one person. I say the same thing as Lou does. I blame everybody in this state who swore that oath to protect and preserve the U.S. Constitution. Everybody. Okay? Starting from the dog catcher all the way down to the governor. I mean, okay. Okay, I love this quote. I just swallowed it. There are two types of laws. Just and unjust. And why do I quote this? Because they believe in this. Totally. They believe this guy. So do I on this one. Terrific quote. He's absolutely correct. Why would anybody enforce or obey an unjust, stupid law? In fact, Edmund Burke, a legislator and statesman from England, said the enforcement of stupid laws is the essence of tyranny. Boy, do we have a lot of essence of tyranny today, huh? The enforcement of stupid laws. Did you see that recently? We sure have. One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Absolutely. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. And just think how easier that's going to be if your sheriff's standing next to you when you do it. And you have the entire sheriff's office on your side. And I have some legal precedents on that too, where that happens. You know that one of our good sheriffs just recently nullified an arrest of a citizen. This is Sheriff Finch in Liberty County, Florida. And one of his deputies arrested a citizen there for merely having a gun in his pocket. A law-abiding citizen. But he didn't have a concealed carry permit. See the double edge on that? Why do we ask permission from government who's already taken an oath to guarantee us the right to keep and bear arms? What? Did I miss something there? So we have to get a permit to be able to do that? Ask the Founding Fathers if that was okay, to get a permit. Okay? So he didn't have his permit, so he went to jail. He went to jail! Floyd Ferris. Absolutely astonishing. The sheriff came down and said, we don't do that. We don't arrest law-abiding citizens for carrying a gun in his pocket. And the only reason the deputy knew that he had a gun in his pocket because he pulled him out on a traffic stop and shook him down and found it. Otherwise, he would have been fine. Staying in his car, he would have been fine. And so, the sheriff nullified that arrest. The deputy went and told the state police and the governor, and they came in and arrested Sheriff Finch and booked him into his own jail. Then he went to trial, and the CSPOA was there with him at the trial, and we helped pay for his defense and helped pay for his house payment while he had no job because the governor suspended him from being a sheriff. And now he had no income. How do you defend yourself when you're unemployed? And so we came in and helped him. And we helped with his lawyers. And I went to the trial. And it was an absolute farce, and the jury saw it. It took 45 minutes to put him back in his job. And that's American freedom. Sheriff Brad Rogers in Elkhart County, Indiana. The FDA comes in and starts harassing one of the Amish farmers there. Now, you know, if you let those Amish get going, man, they're just going to... Crime will go across this country like crazy. And so you got to appreciate the FDA going after the Amish. And so, you know, when the FDA comes to an Amish farmer and they say, we want to come in and check your farm, you know what the Amish are going to say. Come ahead. They're very passive, very submissive. So he does that. So this Mr. Hostetler did it 5 times. And they do it again, and they keep coming. He passed everything. They even took his milk and cheese and butter to have it examined at a lab. He passed everything. They kept coming back. They sent him to a grand jury in Detroit. Now he calls the sheriff. He says, I don't know how I would get to Detroit. I live in Indiana. And my horse and buggy they need new tires. They're not going to make it. And so Sheriff Rogers, who's had our CSPOA training, is one of the top sheriffs in America as far as being constitutional. Hallelujah, right? And he told the FDA that if you come back in my county without three things, probable cause, due process, and duly signed warrants, I will arrest you for trespassing. True story. Yeah. Not good. Because now, Sheriff Rogers calls me and he says, hey Sheriff Mack, got a little problem here. I'm not too worried about it, but the FDA just threatened to arrest me for felony interference, obstruction of justice. He says, it's a felony. I said, yeah, I know. And I said, so how can I help you? And he goes, help me write a letter to him. And I said, great, let's do it. So we wrote a letter. Any of you want that letter, email me at sheriffmack@hotmail, and I send it back to you. Okay? It's a doozy. So we write this letter back to the FDA, telling them why they can't arrest him for anything. And 3 days later, Mr. Hostetter gets a letter, a certified letter from the FDA saying that everything had been dropped. So, and they haven't been back in 3 years. And so this is a sheriff taking a strong stand, trying to protect. What does he do? I am going to protect my citizens from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And he does. And he says, I would have done it even if they had arrested me, and I would go back and do it again. Because they're not going to do that in my county, and they're not going to abuse the citizens, and they're not going to destroy people and families who are law-abiding citizens. And yet, these Amish that think that they can put cows out on their grassland and eat grass and bring them in and milk it and then share the cheese and milk with people without pasteurizing it. If you let that go, you'll have crime everywhere. We got it here. So it's astonishing how much they get away with, but it's also astonishing how stupid it is. And we keep allowing it. And so how do we take America back? Sheriff by sheriff, county by county, state by state, just like Sheriff Rogers showed us. And there's been plenty of other incidences where this has happened. Now here's the oath of office. Everybody swears this oath. It's similar, it changes a little bit from military, but right there at the bottom, look at it. We'll bear true faith and allegiance to the same, so help me God. To the Constitution itself, and to the Constitution of this state. And I'll bet you that the Oregon State Constitution does not allow for gun control, does it? Do you want me to tell you the truth about gun control? Can I give you sort of real quick synopsis? Gun control in the United States of America is against the law. Did you hear that? Against the law. Period. And this is showing who's all supposed to take the oath of office. Every public official who's part of all the three branches of government. All three branches of government, what is it? Legislative, executive, and judicial. All three branches are required to follow the Constitution. If they do not, does that bestow or put any responsibility on anyone in your county or anyone in Oregon to go along with it? They violate their oath, they violate the Constitution, and I have some sort of duty to go along? It's just the opposite. It's the Brad Rogers, it's Sheriff Rogers' response. I will put myself in the way. I will stop this. I will say no. And that's peaceful and effective. Okay? Now, remember now, you're looking at the only sheriff in history to file a lawsuit against the federal government for overreach and violating the 10th Amendment. I sued them on the 10th Amendment. As a matter of fact, Clinton, it was his administration that I sued. So you know what that is technically, right? I'm the only person in history to sue Bill Clinton on a non-sexual matter. about this, but it bears repeating. The doctrine of interposition. Look at that word in gold. This is James Madison and Thomas Jefferson talking about the doctrine of interposition. And look what it says. That right above interpose, read that sentence. That state's legislature is duty bound to interpose its power to prevent the federal government from victimizing its people. There you go. You must have someone in your county and in your state who understands this doctrine and understands that it's their job to put themselves in the way. That's what interpose means. Can I show you real quickly a real brief, quick skit that shows what that means? Ma'am, please. You nodded your head, sorry. Yes, sorry. Okay? Is that your husband? Might as well get him involved too, huh? Okay. Okay, so you don't get near this lady, sorry. Sorry. You'll have to, maybe on Valentine's Day, I'll get out of it. So. Okay, all right. So this is the maiden in distress, and this is the mean IRS agent, or BLM agent, no matter who they work for. Bureaucracy is bureaucracy is bureaucracy. We are now living under a bureaucratic nightmare in this country. Okay? So he's going after her, and the public official of Oregon, who knows and understands the Constitution and the oath of office, interposes. And it's just like basketball. Okay? Defense. He moves, I move. He moves, I move. He moves, I move. Sorry, you will not get to her because I swore an oath to protect her. And I will stay here as long as it takes. You will not abuse her. You will not victimize her because that says to prevent you from victimizing my people. You're not going to. So you sit down there. Go back to Washington, where you have jurisdiction, and when she recovers, she might meet you there. Okay? But you have to promise. Okay? No more victimizing and no more abusing. And seriously, folks, that is interposing. You literally put yourself in the way as long as you are sheriff, as long as you are in that position, as long as you are judge or county commissioner, or doesn't matter, dog catcher, governor, you interpose on their behalf. And that is why we say there must be some alternative or option for people, or crazy things are going to happen because out of the frustration, what else do they have to lose? And I'm going to tell you, some of the people that were here in your community were at their rope's end. And I'm sorry that they came here and made you part of it, but they were. And it's easy to understand the frustration, isn't it? I don't support the tactic, but I understand the cause and the frustration. Thank you, sweet Damson. And I'm not going to give any strict formula for what the interposer will do each time. Might be different. But you start with saying, no, you will not do that here anymore. Let the IRS know there's certain things you're not going to do in my county anymore. And there's ways to enforce it. Absolutely. That we have allowed, and that the U.S. Congress and President have allowed the IRS to continue to criminalize and victimize the people in this country in such a ruthless, brutal Gestapo manner, and that now it's almost accepted as mainstream, that that's just what they do. You know, it's like death and taxes. No. We're taking our country back, we're taking the Constitution back, and it all boils down to some very simple fundamentals of freedom and liberty. Now I'm going to get into the case. I told you I'd show you the evidence. I've been showing you the evidence, and I'll show you some more. Okay? From the only time a handful of sheriffs sue the federal government, go to the Supreme Court, and win. Would you like to see some of the principles from that case? I'm going to show you. This was the two. Sheriff Prince from Montana, and yours truly. Okay? Now, Judge Roll was my judge in Tucson, Arizona, and he said this. He surmised summarize the case in one sentence. Mack is thus forced to choose between keeping his oath or obeying the law, subjecting himself to possible sanctions. Those sanctions, Roll was absolutely livid about that the federal government had the audacity and the arrogance to threaten to arrest us if we just failed to comply. What law did we break? We didn't bow down and kiss the hand of the king, and we refused. Can you believe there was only 7? 7 out of 3,086. 7. Now, the Clio, that's what they called us. That's what they called the sheriffs in this case. Don't you love it when the federal government gets it right? Because you know what Clio stands for? Chief Law Enforcement Officer. And you know what that's referencing? The sheriffs. Even they know who the head chief law enforcement officer is. I don't make this up, folks. I'm just showing you the Supreme Court decision. Okay? Under a separate provision of the Gun Control Act, that's the Gun Control Act, Federal Gun Control Act of 1968, that came about because of the assassinations of the 60s of the president, so on. The Gun Control Act, any person who knowingly violates a section of the Gun Control Act amended by the Brady Bill shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for no more than 1 year or both. That's the threat of arrest. That's there, folks. I didn't make it up. Okay? I'm just showing you the facts. I'm going to go right past that, sorry. Now, Jennifer Long testified before the United States Congress in 1998 that the IRS routinely fabricated evidence against citizens who they knew could not defend themselves financially. And they've been doing that for about 50 years. And one person they did it to was my father. And they fabricated all this stuff against my father. Well, my father was a former FBI agent, and he went after them, and he was a better investigator than they were, and he uncovered their subterfuge, found out that he owed them no money, and that they actually owed him $600. Did he get it? No. They went on to some other poor victim. And they have been victimizing America for way too long. And why we have allowed this instead of just simplifying the tax code if they needed any money at all, which they don't. And how do we know that they don't need money? Why? Because they'll just add to the national debt for any reason they want to. So why not leave us alone and just add it to the national debt? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to them if they do that. And you know that our taxes, $1.2 trillion every year in federal income tax, only pay the interest on our national debt. So they don't need to just add it to the national debt. You went from 8 trillion to 19 trillion in just 7, 8 years. Go a little more. Leave us alone. They do not need the money. They take it and they don't care. It doesn't. And have they ever stopped stupid spending and wasteful spending? Not even close. Not even close. Okay. Get this. This is all about state sovereignty here. It is incontestable that the Constitution established a system of dual sovereignty. The federal government does have some sovereignty. They've almost thrown it all away, but they do have some. And where they have it, but it's very small compared to state sovereignty, which is very large. Okay? Although the state surrendered, and that's not the right term, and Scalia, who wrote this decision, corrects this a little bit later. But this is not, we didn't surrender anything. Okay? We delegated, just like the 10th Amendment uses. The word is delegated. And we only delegated a few powers, discrete and enumerated. And I'll show you how he corrects this. But what's the key point here? It's in bleeding heart red. They, the states, retain a residuary and inviolable sovereignty. My friends, state sovereignty is only inviolable if you have state officials who keep it that way. You don't practice. You're not going to protect sovereignty unless you have a governor and local officials with the courage to do it. Our Constitution and our liberty are in the hands of the people who we elect. And if they don't do it, we're the only one left. And that's where we don't want to go with this. Because then there's trouble. So we've got to have local officials who know and understand this and have the courage to keep America free. Okay. Residual state sovereignty was also implicit, of course. This is in the Mack Prince decision again. You have those little booklets. In the Constitution's conferral upon Congress of not all governmental powers. And what kind of powers do they have? But only discrete enumerated ones. Read the first words there. Discrete enumerated ones. Then, how do we keep it discrete and enumerated? Which implication was rendered express. That means rendered absolute by the 10th Amendment's assertion. Somebody, somewhere in Oregon must assert the 10th Amendment. Who's supposed to your county attorney and to the state attorney for Oregon? Could I ask you, please, email me, call me, come to this meeting, and I'll debate any attorney about any of this. I don't care who they are. I'll debate anybody about this. I'll gladly stand toe-to-toe with anybody because I've got the facts on my side. Okay? Please tell me who lawfully and constitutionally is to enforce the 10th Amendment. It's every state official, and it's every sovereign citizen. And that's every one of us. No, being a sovereign citizen is not a radical term where you're crazy and the government's going to watch you and keep and put you in prison. Okay? We're sovereign. Okay? The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution or prohibited by the state are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. But that's what we sued on. If you don't have anybody enforcing that, you lose an essential part of liberty and freedom. We have to enforce the 10th Amendment. And I'm going to show you more facts about this right now. The great innovation of this design is that our citizens would have two political capacities, one state and one federal. Now get that in bleeding heart red and yellow. Each protected from incursion by the other. I didn't make that up. That's the United States Supreme Court. June 27, 1997. Who's to protect you from the incursions of the federal government? Okay. And it's not the geographical boundary, is it? That's not going to do anything. A map is not going to enforce state sovereignty. It's the people that we hired that promised us in God's name that that's what they were going to do. Pretty simple process. Takes some courage, but it's pretty simple. As Madison expressed it, the local or municipal authorities form distinct and independent portions of the supremacy. Who does? Who forms part of the supremacy? The local or municipal authorities. There you go. Lou Dobbs was right, wasn't he? That's why he blamed local officials who did nothing. And that's why we had all this problem. Whose fault was it? Then get this. This separation of the two spheres, and the two spheres we're talking about is the state sphere, which is this big, the federal sphere, which is this big, because it has only what? Discrete enumerated powers, as previously stated, and as the Constitution says, is one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. Did you catch that part?
Yeah.
The 10th Amendment is one of our structural protections of liberty. And thanks for that shout out. Appreciate it. All right, you're welcome. So, it's only, wait, I know it's getting late. Should we just leave? Because we're not talking about anything important here. We're just talking about those structural protections of liberty things. You know, who needs it? Who needs it? You know? I'm telling you right now, I think there's a few people in Oregon who need it. We all do. And we're all going to. And this is not going to be a daily process. It's only going to happen once in a while. With Brad Rogers in Elkhart, Indiana, it's happened once or twice. In the last 7 or 8 years. It won't be every day, and if we have hundreds and hundreds of sheriffs and local officials doing this, there's no stopping it. You see the picture? We take back America, county by county, state by state. Now, get this, he gives us another solution. He gives us another equation for liberty. It's in gold. A healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse from either front. When you came to this meeting tonight, did you want to know how to reduce tyranny and abuse from the federal government?
Yes.
There it is. A healthy balance of power. Do we have that healthy balance today?
No!
Of course not. And so how do we take it back? We get governors and state legislators and county commissioners and heaven forbid your county attorney that would actually stand for liberty. But the one on the front lines with boots on the ground is your sheriff. And now it's up to you. You have an election coming up pretty soon. I challenge you. Vote for a man with the courage to stand, with at least the courage to try. Okay? And look at this. He's actually quoting Madison. Can you believe it? A United States Supreme Court decision that quotes the Founding Fathers? Unbelievable. And he says, hence a double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other at the same time that they'll be controlled by itself. Any question is whether or not the federal government will control itself? Yeah. Okay. So that's where we come in. It's called state sovereignty. It's called Oregon. And why don't we do it? And what has happened over the years that has done this? People say, oh, well, it was a civil war. It wasn't a civil war. The northern states didn't surrender their sovereignty because the Union kept it together and the North won. The northern states didn't surrender the 10th Amendment. No, my dear friends, this was a gradual encroachment and stealing of authority by our own federal government. And it's happened worse as the time went on. And now, how do they make sure we stay in line? They bribe us. And they pay so much money to your state. And first, we send the money to them. And they send it back to us in bribes. It's a wonderful system. It's stupid as hell, but it's a wonderful system. Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. And so, the first governor and state legislature that finally wakes up and sees this and says, oh yeah, well, we're not sending any more money to Washington. First of all, you don't know what the heck you're doing with it, and you don't balance the budget, and you bribe us with our own money. So we're just going to stop sending it to you. And we'll collect all federal income tax from now on, and we'll send you what you deserve. And from now on, just stay out of here unless we talk. And I guarantee you, folks, we might be a bunch of rednecks and dummies in Arizona, but I guarantee you, we could run our own education and the Grand Canyon without the federal government. Guaranteed. And look, they even go to the very issue that was involved in threatening to arrest sheriffs and say, we're going to commandeer the office of sheriff all over the country. What does he say? The power of the federal government would be augmented immeasurably if it were able to impress into its service and at no cost to itself the peace officers of the 50 states. They can't do that. But we go along all the time. Why? They give us those federal grants. And some sheriff's associations actually teach sheriffs how to get more federal grants. We teach them to not take one penny from them. Leave them alone. Don't take their filthy bribes. Because you know what? I used to say, well, these are legalized bribes. There's no such thing as legalized bribe. A bribe is against the law. Is a bribe. Okay. Next. The federal government, we have, may not compel the states to enact or administer a federal regulatory program. This is from the United States Supreme Court, my dear friends. They cannot do that. But when they pay us, we'll do it. And in fact, our own governor in Arizona did it. She was completely opposed to Obamacare until the $2 billion bribe to expand Medicare in the state of Arizona. This happened in other states too. And she held a big old rally out in front of the state legislature in Phoenix. And this is how, if you've ever watched Star Wars, this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause. And that's what she got when she took that run. She got thunderous applause. Same thing happened in Star Wars, and it's astonishing how we copy that. But the Constitution, this is my favorite quote from this decision. This is from the U.S. Supreme Court, folks. Scalia quoted another justice in there. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power, here we go, among sovereigns and among branches of government, precisely, so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. End quote. The crisis of the day. Have you heard that one before? That they fabricate and that we buy on a silver platter. The crisis of the day. Remember Rahm Emanuel? That was his motto. Never let a good crisis go to waste. I don't make any of this stuff up, folks. I'm just a messenger. Now, this is the order of the court. Start in gold. This is the last line. This is it. This is Scalia giving the bottom line order of the court in the Mack Prince case. The federal government may neither issue directives requiring the states to address particular problems, nor command the state's officers or those of their political subdivisions, the counties and cities, to administer or enforce a federal regulatory program. It matters not whether policy making is involved, and no case-by-case weighing of burdens or benefits is necessary. Such commands are fundamentally incompatible with our constitutional system of dual sovereignty. My friends, the only way we maintain dual sovereignty is if we exercise our power as states. We are 50 united states with a small u, 50 United States, and you'll see that in some of the original documentation written by the founders. Again, I didn't make any of this up. We can be free. We've gone way too far into this socialistic, communistic, all power belonging to the federal government when it was never meant to be that. It was never meant to be. There is no way we can let this keep going. We can rein in the federal government. Do you know that right now, who lawfully determines the breadth and length and extremity of the federal government's power? Only they do. That was never meant to be. There is no way you can let the federal government be the judge of its own power and how far it goes. And the states are required to be a check and balance. And that's how we take it back. Just as he said, a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce tyranny. And again, that's not a geographical boundary defending and interposing for her. It's the elected officials that we put in place here. And so, can I tell you something? Be entertained by the farce known as the presidential election. Go ahead, be entertained. But you want to get serious about an election? Get serious about who your next sheriff is. Get serious about somebody when they raise their right arm, that they mean it when they tell you they will protect your God-given rights or die trying. That he will interpose on your behalf. That he will protect your land from everyone. Another thing that Thomas Paine said there, what difference does it make to me if a highwayman, which means a robber on the street, a highwayman or the government steals all my property? It's gone either way. The highwayman will give you a fighting chance. The government never will. Who would you rather fight, a highwayman or the IRS? Okay, and for anybody to pretend, I'm going to tell you right now, you liars and you fools who try to pretend to the people of this country and in this county that you can gain justice if you just get a good lawyer. What a joke. First of all, good lawyers are so few. And secondly, who can afford that? Do you know how much it costs to go to this Supreme Court case? Thank goodness I didn't take it, or it would have been dead in the water. I was never a member of the NRA. I have been recently, and I'm a member of Gun Owners of America, and that's the one that won't compromise. I really love Larry Pratt and his attitude and his fighting ability there in Washington to preserve the Second Amendment. But this is the thing. Our rights are only protected by the people who have the courage to do it. And so I called the NRA when I decided to do my lawsuit, when my wife gave me permission. And I called the NRA and I said, hey, this is Sheriff Mack from Arizona, and I don't know if you can help me with this or not, but I want to sue the federal government over the Brady bill. And the next line totally shocked me. I was talking to Richard Gardner, a lawyer for the NRA, and he goes, Sheriff, we've already been preparing the paperwork on this case, and we've been praying that you would call. And I said, let's go get him. And this was a full-time job, and so I had 2 full-time jobs, suing the federal government and doing my job as sheriff. And we were really busy. And it paid off. But let me tell you right now, if I had to do it over again, and I'm going to tell everybody now pretty much the same thing I've told myself since, I would never do it again. Not that I wouldn't stand and fight. I would. But time for suing is over. Why would you go to court and ask permission to keep your oath of office? You don't need to do that. The time for suing, no more. The time for doing is now. We must be doers of the word. We must be doers in defending our Constitution. There is not time nor money to go to court on these issues. And anybody who tells you, well, I wish I could help you, but doggone it, you know, I just don't have the authority to tell this abusive criminal if I'm not, all of you now, okay, I've got, you just reminded me. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to ask you right now, in all sincerity, I've got to ask you. You raise your hand if you want a sheriff or any other local official. You want a sheriff who will say, well, I just won't protect you from government criminals. If they're after your land, you'll have to get a lawyer. I don't have the authority, and I will not interfere. They have jurisdiction over me, and I will let the federal government come in here and do whatever they want. Raise your hand if you want to vote for that guy. The 8-year-old kid will still vote for us. Okay, nobody raise their hand. Okay, you're on your way. You're on your way to take it back to your family. Okay, stand for freedom. Put freedom and liberty first. And I really, and usually, yeah. Throw me one of those. Oh, wait, no, I got one up here. Let me see. What we want all of you to do, okay? And I don't know if Nita told any of you, but sometimes it costs to travel here and do these things. And I do, and I've been doing this up until just about the last 6 months free. I want each of you to take a card. I want you to examine this, and I want you to consider becoming a member of CSPOA. Everybody can join. Everybody can join. And I know some of you already have my book, but the CSPOA is only as strong as the members we have in it. And we love to have citizens join us. You are a part of this. This is your organization. This is your solution. This is your time. This is all of us getting together and joining the holy cause of liberty. And I'm asking you to join with us in this. Is there anybody here not willing to take the same oath that our founders took to each other at the end of the Declaration of Independence? With the faith in divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. We will never ask for your fortune. We'll only ask you to do what you can. Okay? Do what you can. Keep us going. Take us to the next level. Let's have 300 or 400 members in this room join up with us. I'm asking you. You want us to keep this rolling? Roll with us. Join us in this holy cause of liberty. it has been more than a pleasure to be with you. I know the questions could get really crazy tonight, and I hope you don't have too many. I hope I've answered most of them. I hope that I've given you a semblance of hope, and I know we've gone a little bit longer than I said I was going to go. Can we maybe just keep this really short to 3 questions? I normally don't like going with questions, but for you, I'd really like to. And let me tell you right now, I'll warn you right now. I'm going to take 3 questions. They better be good ones and represent the community, I hope. And they have to be questions. Did you hear me? Have to be questions. First one I saw was right here. How can we get the Hammonds out of jail?
Yes.
I believe that you are now faced with a monumental task of doing that because the door got slammed when they went in. Is there still alternatives? Absolutely. But they should have never gone, and that's when it should have happened, before they went, obviously. So I'm going to tell you right now, I would love to come back and be part of any conversation and be giving suggestions. I gave suggestions before. They went unheeded. Okay? And I gave some real viable alternatives that could have kept the Hammonds out. But people in high places would not listen to me. I think there's a couple of alternatives still there, but they're not nearly as strong now that they're behind bars. And I'm going to meet with some people about this tomorrow. But it would have been a lot easier, obviously. Hindsight's 20/20, but it would have been a lot easier before. Is there a way? Yes. Is it much more difficult now? Yes. And I'll tell you right now, I would be willing to come back here at my own expense to help you devise those alternatives. Okay? But we'd need some public officials here with us. Okay? Back.
So this is for the benefit of someone that's running for sheriff, and
You mean Alan Johnson?
when we elect him, I know that we're so inundated with federal incursion. We're so inundated with federal incursion on so many different facets that we're going to have a lot of people wanting him to take up their particular issue.
Yeah. That's difficult.
Right, and so how do you suggest he handles that? Do you suggest maybe picking one issue, or?
There's ways to do that, and we'll be doing, he's good now, but yeah, okay. We will be offering training, and we offer training all across the country on that. We offer our services, we offer our support. We are a support team for them. And like I said earlier, there's not going to be an equation that's going to fit all. But on these BLM issues, it's not that difficult. And so we're working on several issues in Washington on this, where we think there's very little hope there, but we are working with sheriffs. Now imagine that there would be 30, 40, 50 sheriffs in Oregon alone that say, BLM, there's a few things you're not going to do in our counties anymore. Or you have 2 or 3 sheriffs saying that. Which one's going to be better? I'm telling you right now, if we get a third, not even a third, if we get a fourth of our nation's sheriffs, that's like 600. If we get a fourth of our nation's sheriffs to unite behind erecting barriers, as Madison said, erecting barriers against the encroachments of the national authority, we're going to win this. Remember, this is peaceful, it's effective, and it's how we serve the people of our communities. This is just serve and protect. Our motto is also on that. Protect and serve, uphold and defend. So that's really the best way we serve and protect our people is by upholding and defending the United States Constitution, just as we promised to do. Now, those are really good questions. Really good. You've got work to do. We want you to join with us. We want you to do this. Okay? I'm going to take one more question and then I'm going to close.
Yes, I was talking with Dr. Stevens in Bend, Oregon, and he told me to help out the Hammonds somewhat. He said that we needed to let Governor Brown be taught them so many different things about getting the money back, like our education. Portland decides our money that comes over here. They do most of everything. How do we stop this?
Well, it's a lot easier to stop it in the state than it is Washington, D.C. And so it's not even that you have to have a governor that knows and understands this, because you don't have one. But again, if you build these defenses in your counties, again, it has to start here. Okay? Don't start in Portland. Start here. And you literally create a constitutional county. Literally. And so many people will want to move it.
But what I'm saying is on the voting rights, Portland votes, they have more of a vote.
They outvote us.
Yeah.
I'm tired of that.
They outvote us.
There's ways to make them irrelevant also. But if you create that constitutional county, and I'm telling you again, the last one that's going to get on board that constitution train is your county attorney. You really got to get sharp in your boots for that guy. Okay? Whoever it is, I don't care. I don't even know who he is. Don't care. So, all right. Now I need. You want to be my helper? All you have to do is hold that for me. Okay, your arm's going to get a little bit tired. So maybe I need somebody taller or with a longer arm. Oh yeah. Sorry, you've been replaced. So, my friends, I do this all across the country. I've been to all 50 states, and I love these beautiful children. Love the beautiful child there. And this is just wonderful to see you here with your kids like that. It's beautiful. I have some grandkids just this age, and I know I don't look that old, but my wife and I have 12 grandkids, and that's why we dedicated ourselves to this so much. Because it's the same faces everywhere I go. These beautiful little faces, your eyes looking at me, hoping that there really is a solution. I hope that I've given you some hope. There is a solution. It's nonviolent, but it's effective. And we take back our freedom. Now, when I was first a rookie cop, I attended a seminar, and it was taught by Dr. W. Cleon Scalzi. And he converted me to the Constitution. And after the 2-day conference, which was a law enforcement training on the Constitution in Salt Lake City, he handed me his book, The Making of America, and he said, promise me that you'll teach these things to your children. Well, my son Jimmy can attest that I have, and I've actually started teaching them to my grandchildren. And my first grandchild was a girl, and she was born 9.5 years ago, on the 4th of July. And her name is Liberty. So Liberty LaDawn Mack Hardy is this beautiful little ball of liberty. And to dedicate this to my grandkids, and to yours, and to your beautiful children, and to mine, I dedicate this to our founding fathers, to you, and to the Hammonds, and to all those who have been victimized by our own government. And with that in mind, I share with you now this little kindergarten exercise that Dr. Scalzi had 250 cops get up and do with him. And I leave it with you as my dedication from my heart to yours about what American liberty is all about. And it goes like this. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And that's the eagle. Long may she be free.
everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's too bad, man. I get cut off. Right there is Buckhorn Mountain. I'm so sorry.